I forgot Hudson Hartman. I got his name wrong. I'm so sorry, Micah.
You're fine.
I was like, his biggest fan, which is his mom, Mika Hudson, is joining us with us, and he has been selected by the National Down Society, which is scheduled to broadcast an annual video presenting in Times Square on September the 17th. And they're from Pass Christi Ann, and it's Hudson Hartman. And I had the names backwards. I was like, that's not right. And so anyway, it's only going to get better from here, Micah. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share your story. I've actually been following Hudson for a while on social media. And then when I heard this was his 4th year to get selected, I was like, wow, this is time. It's time to share his story here on Good Things. So, and I know as his biggest fan, you have been sharing his story for some time now. So how excited is it to see him back on Times Square for the 4th year in a row?
It's everything for our family. Hudson is just such a light, and to be able to see him in New York on such a big scale, it's just a huge reminder to us about no matter how big you are or what differences you have, that you can make a big impact in this world, and he gets to do that again this year. It's really incredible.
At 4 years old, does he recognize, how does he respond seeing his face that big in Times Square?
So the first year we were able to go, we went actually to New York. He was flown in for the 2019 Buddy Walk. That's where he was introduced as the Grand Marshal. That was our first year. He was still little. He didn't quite understand what was going on. Of course, he loved all the crowds and the clapping, and he was just in his element. He totally is just, he thrives on all the excitement. But then, of course, COVID happened. And so the next couple of years for us after that, we just were watching it on television, and it was cute to see him look up and know that, hey, that's me. It happens really fast. They show 500 beautiful faces on the Times Square video. It's really a remarkable day just to enjoy all of across our country, all the beautiful faces out there that are really making a big difference, and for Hudson to be one of those. But his expression is just very sweet. I think as he gets bigger, I really hope that we continue this momentum, because I think that his understanding of what's going on is just going to continue to get bigger and bigger. And I really hope that by next year we're back in New York and watching it live in person, because there's no sight like it.
And that'd be to celebrate his 5th birthday. So how does he get, or how do they select the 500 that get to be presented?
Of course. So every year they put out a call asking for people to submit photos. It's part of their fundraising. Everyone pays $5, which is minimal. It's just an opportunity to come together and raise money for a great cause. And then they go through a process, and I have been blessed to be an ambassador for NDSS. And so since Hudson was the 2019 Grand Marshal, we started talking about my passion and my want for changing the laws and making the world a better place for Hudson. And it just so happens that we've been really intricate in changing laws and doing things here in the state of Mississippi. And I think a lot of that is why Hudson continues to get reselected, is that we put in a lot of work. We put in a lot of time. It's all volunteer time for me, but we're just making the world better.
You are making the world better. And he's got a cute smile. Why wouldn't you want? And if you're looking over at SuperTalk TV, we've got Hudson's picture up if you want to see his adorable smile. Will this be the photo that they use in Times Square, or will there be another photo?
So there'll be another photo. It's actually the photo that's on my shirt right now. So it's got a story behind it. Yeah. So this picture is going to be used. We worked with Kelly and Kelso, who is his name is Jordan Burke. He's an author and illustrator, and Jordan writes the most adorable little books, and they're about his uncle Kelly. Uncle Kelly passed away several years ago, and Jordan had helped practically, like they were best friends. They were brothers, really, not really uncle. And anyway, Jordan took his pain and his love for his Uncle Kelly and started thinking about how could he make the world better. And one of the ways that he did that was he started writing children's books. Originally, he wrote them so that typical children could learn more about Down syndrome and not be so scared by it, because there's nothing to be scared by. It's just an extra love chromosome. But what he realized was that it was really wonderful for children with Down syndrome to see themselves being used in books for good change. So it had a different twist to it. Originally, he did it with the heart to teach, but then he really learned a lot from it as well. So on the picture, you'll see Hudson's wearing a T-shirt. Hudson is one of the characters that Jordan Burke used, and then the little girl underneath, her name is Gretchen. She lives in Arkansas, and then Uncle Kelly's in it. So I went with this picture because it really is empowering when we all come together, the things we do. Gretchen's mom makes shirts, and she does a lot of wonderful Down syndrome shirts to support the community. So it was a combination of our advocacy for changing laws, Jordan's advocacy for writing books for children, and then Melanie's coming together with printing the shirts.
You call yourself Hudson's biggest fan, which as a mom, I feel like we should be our kid's biggest fan, but you've been advocating for Hudson since he was in utero, and it's been kind of a rougher ride or you're not your average sort of rodeo, should I say, since you found out you were pregnant with Hudson. So what all have you and your family been through to get to this point?
So it's been a difficult journey, and saying that I can sit here and say a mom's love is absolutely the most powerful thing on earth. I really I don't say just for myself, for all moms, we are superheroes. Hudson is a superhero too, but the love and determination to get him here safely was always my goal. At 12 weeks pregnant, I went in for some genetic testing. Of course, I went in with just the side, this is going to be easy. No, we don't have any birth defects in our family. I feel great. The pregnancy, I'm excited. And then we went in from that room into another room for an ultrasound, and the room went totally cold. We were laughing and talking about being geriatric. That's what they call old moms. And so I mean, that's what you do. You just go in and we were all smiles and beaming, and here's our baby. And then the lady doing the ultrasound, she kept leaving the room, and she came back, and she'd leave again and come back. And the more she left, the different her face changed as she came in. And the last time that she walked in with another doctor. And they started talking to me about Hudson's soft markers, and that he had this cute little button nose. The way I described it, the way they described it, was he was missing his nasal bone, and his daddy is a football player and had a big, thick neck, and they described that Hudson had a thick neck, and then he had this really large hole in his heart, and that really large hole in his heart was the biggest concern. But they said, based off of the information we have, we believe that he has something going on, and we'd like to do further testing. But before we do that, you have options. And automatically, that's what they were offering to me, with no diagnosis, an abortion. And I was, no, we have a baby. My husband and I, he gripped my hand so tight, and we looked at each other and we said, don't mention that one again. You just tell us how to get our baby here safely. And that's this conversation is done as far as that goes. And so with respecting our wishes, they never mentioned that one again, but they did call us with the news of trisomy 21. 48 hours later, we did do an amnio. Just, everyone has their own walk, and everyone gets to decide what's best for them. For us, the trisomy 13 or 18 were very terrifying. My husband's in the medical field, and hearing those, we wanted to hear that we were going to get Hudson here safely, or at least prepare our hearts for what was coming. And when we got the 21 diagnosis, we were celebrating. We were dancing in the kitchen. I can remember it like it's right now. I can picture us twirling and laughing and so excited that we were going to get to hold our baby in our arms. We were going to get to love him, watch him grow up, all the wonderful things that we weren't sure with the diagnosis how far we would get. Now we had like this free ride to cross the finish line and look forward to our future. But it wasn't all easy from that point. We were living in Colorado. My husband is active duty Air Force, and we were stationed at the academy. And the altitude was really, really hard. And being pregnant and being geriatric and pregnant, my heart started to fail. And they called me in for some testing, and they said, we just need to admit you. We're going to deliver Hudson. We were at 30 weeks pregnant, and it was not the picture that I wanted. It wasn't the please don't do this, please don't deliver him. Is everyone that would walk in the room, I was begging to stay pregnant. And I had a doctor come in, and she was incredible. She sat down and she actually
said, and we're going to pause right there. I'm going to get more with Mika coming up next. You'll see I've got Hudson's biggest fan. I'm going to get it right this time. His mom, Mika, she's here from Pass Christian to celebrate the fact that the National Down Syndrome Society has selected Hudson for the 4th year in a row to be presented in Times Square on September the 17th. We can all watch it, right?
Absolutely. You can tune in. They will be live streaming it through their Facebook. So just join National Down Syndrome Society's Facebook page, and starting at 8:30 in the morning, these 500 gorgeous faces will pop across your screen. And Hudson should be around the 8:50 mark. It goes based off of alphabetical order.
And he's been a little fighter ever since he got here, right? I mean, you didn't have the easiest pregnancy, and then you finally got Hudson over the finish line, and then his first couple of years weren't, well, he's only 4, but his first little bit of while also kind of gave him some ups and downs. So, I mean, what all has he been fighting through?
No, of course. So when Hudson was born, he was born with that really large hole in his heart that I talked about, and I was able to stay pregnant to 37 weeks after my heart failed. I basically was beating at 13 beats a minute. We got a temporary pacemaker placed just in time that allowed me to be able to stay pregnant. The miracle of Hudson during the time of my heart failing was that when we got my heart beating the right way, he actually grew. He went from the 35th percentile to the 67th percentile in the time that I was in the hospital. So going forward and getting him here, his biggest and strongest, really was it was a must. I kept thinking like being born at 31 weeks, 32 weeks, 33 weeks, what does this picture look like for Hudson with a hole in his heart? What I didn't know was that Hudson was going to be born with transient leukemia. So Hudson, day 1 of life, had blast cells. And as a matter of fact, I remember when they took his blood work, they had to send it over next door to the Children's Hospital. The Children's Hospital wouldn't deliver me because of my heart, so they needed me to be delivered at the University Hospital, and then they were doing all of Hudson's, looking at all of his stuff at the Children's Hospital, so they were sending that over. Well, a team from the Children's Hospital came over to sit down and talk to us about Hudson and the transient leukemia. And I remember the first 48 hours, my husband and I weren't eating, we weren't sleeping, you just couldn't grasp that your child, we had been fighting so hard to get him here, get him across that finish line, have him at his healthiest. We knew that he wouldn't be perfectly healthy, but at his healthiest. Right. And so having the team come in was just kind of surreal. Like here's this cancer team all meeting around, and you're going to have hem-onc and they're going to follow you. But then they told us this, and this is a miracle about children with Down syndrome. So a child that is born with transient leukemia or has any kind of leukemia or cancer, if they are born with Down syndrome, it takes less medication and less time to go into remission. And so Hudson, at 4 weeks of life, fought off his blast cells with no medicine whatsoever.
Oh, that's good.
All the time. So, absolutely. And that's, again, the miracle of being able to be on this journey and learn all of these things, because Hudson, he came into the world, like I said, a little superhero. We knew he needed the open heart surgery. He did have that at 3.5 months old. So my first bit of Hudson's life was the 6 weeks in the NICU. I just took time to get to know Hudson, what his needs were, so that we could meet all of those once we got home, once the medical teams were no longer checking in on him daily, what he would need. Now, he has had some other hiccups, like he was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and so we take medicine for that, and that's simple. And he doesn't have tear ducts in his lower eyelids. And in order for them to do a surgery on that, they have to break his little nose, and so I'm not quite ready for that one. So we're gonna hope that his eyes just kind of do their own thing, and that he's good without going through that surgery. But this past January, Hudson was diagnosed with dual diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism, and so we have started a journey of learning ABA therapy, and Hudson using communication boards. He is communicating with me. It is the most inspiring thing. We went from Hudson, he's nonverbal. We went from him kind of guessing. The cute thing is there's only so many movies he really, really likes, but he likes them a lot and he wants to watch them often. So if you turn on Toy Story and it's not what he wants to watch, he'd hand you the remote. And then you'd change it to Monsters, and he'd do the remote, and then he'd say, oh, no, it's
they
frozen.
learn away.
Yeah, and so he was trying to, so either he compromised and was like, oh, I'll just watch this because I'm tired of handing Mom the remote, or she finally guessed what I'm thinking, what I want to watch. Well, now we have this communication system. It's this really cool pegboard that's got all of his favorite movies on it on Velcro, and he literally pulls off what movie he wants to watch and he hands it to me. And then I can hold up a board that says yes and no, and he pulls off yes, and then we go and we turn on the TV. So he's communicating with me, just getting in the right therapy, early intervention, I believe is everything, making sure that Hudson has all the tools in his toolbox that he needs to be successful. I was recently asked what I dream for Hudson, and the answer is whatever Hudson dreams. I can't word it any other way. My job is to make sure that he can have as big of dreams and be as successful as he wants to be, and whatever he decides is great for him is exactly meeting my dreams.
And one of the ways you've done that as his mother and his biggest cheerleader is you have gone to bat to change laws to just make life a little bit better for Hudson, as you say. But when you make life better for Hudson, you're making life better for so many other families that's walking a similar journey. Tell us how you got into your, advocacy work.
Of course.
Yeah.
So God, totally God. My aunt passed away with Alzheimer's, and I remember my grandmother talking about the pieces of her life's puzzle, how when she would get to heaven that all those pieces would fit back together, so you didn't need to worry about if she knew you were putting on fresh socks or if you were rubbing her hands with lotion, that she would know that when she gets to heaven that you did that. And so that's kind of how I've looked at my life with God and the puzzle pieces of what all comes together. We knew that when Hudson was born in Colorado, it was better before his surgery, but his little heart didn't quite do very well after his surgery. The altitude was just too hard. So we had already lived here. We were stationed at Keesler Air Force Base in 2009 to 12, and we knew that we loved it here. We knew that this felt most like home for us. So when we learned that Hudson didn't do good at the altitude, we put to move back to sea level. And when they said Keesler was available, we're like, we'll take it. So we bought a house sight unseen, and we moved into it in Ocean Springs. And just so happened across the road, our neighbor was running for Senate, Jeremy England. And he was going through his campaign, had his volunteer workers there, and we were able to meet several of them, and they all fell in love with Hudson. I mean, he's just this little gift, little light that's easy to fall in love with. And one of his campaign workers said, I have something that I'd like to introduce you to. Would you be open? We'd like for you to share Hudson. And this was for the Human Life Equality Act. And I said, absolutely. It was with Susan B. Anthony List. And so Hudson and I got in the car and we drove to Jackson, and we went to the Capitol. And I'll never forget our very first person that we ran into. Hudson fell asleep in my arms. And we were standing in line with the gentleman who discovered the Titanic. And he was like, can I hold him, please? I really want to hold him. And so I passed Hudson over into his arms, and he carried him through the security. And there's where Jeremy introduced us on the Senate floor. And Senator Hudson kind of was born from that. The Human Life Equality Act sailed through. They didn't think that it would, and we were able to get that passed. Praise the Lord. What the Human Life Equality Act does is it gave Mississippi, we got to say that you couldn't abort a baby because of sex, race, or disability. And so we were protecting children even before the Roe v. Wade decision was overturned with the Dobbs case. And so that was just really, really wonderful to be a part of. And then from that, learning, my journey, I can tell you that nobody offered me anything. They didn't tell me a word about Down syndrome. They just sent me home to look on the internet. The internet is not our friend when it comes to diagnosis about your children. It's out of date. It has it's
negative.
Very negative. It's more than negative. Public perception can be so cruel, and so being able to change that for moms. That's when we introduced. So I told you I was an ambassador for NDSS. This is when I became an ambassador. Their political views don't totally align with mine, but when it comes to Down syndrome, I'm able to work with them on getting laws that better lives. So Hudson's Law came into place to make sure that moms were given up-to-date and accurate information at time of diagnosis, whether it be in utero or after birth. And that way they're getting from their doctors, the people that they trust the most, giving them this information. I found it really astounding when my daughter, and she's going to love that I'm telling this on radio, but we went to talk to a dermatologist about acne. I'll just put this out there. And they gave me so much big information. And it was like a whole binder full of stuff. And there it was telling, we had to answer all these questions. She had to prove that she was old enough and mature enough to go through the treatment. And then the diagnosis of Down syndrome, you're handed nothing.
Well, Mika, it's been such a pleasure learning you and Hudson's story. Where can we follow you online for more information?
Yes, of course. I'm on Instagram for Mika Hartman or Team Hudson the Strong. And then you can always find me on Facebook under Mika Hartman.
I'm going to make sure I'll share it in the Good Things Facebook group and to how we can watch on September 17th. Next time, bring Hudson, because this just is the first of many.
Perfect.
All right, stick with us. We got movies coming up.